Oh, hello there!
The Mario lore is incredibly complex. From the several debates on the matter, the question of what is canon to the Mario universe is a heavily contested topic, some interpretations of the lore being so restrictive that not even the guides are considered canon, to a fully composite canon. A few months ago, in 2023, the Super Mario Bros. Movie by Illumination Studios hit theaters to a critical acclaim from fans of the series, going as far as making $1 billion within its first month. However, to those researching the Mario lore, a new question has entered the scene. Was this new release actually canon to the mainline Mario titles? YouTuber Nintendude, in collaboration with Marioverse leader Sean D. Walsh, attempted to answer this question. Their answer was a resounding no, claiming that the movie was entirely separate from the mainline Mario games. But they are misled. The Mario movie is a canonical entry in the Marioverse, and today with collaborator Storm, we intend to defend this position to the fullest. But enough nonsense. Let's go! The first segment of this video involves claiming that the Mario movie is contradictory to the origins of Mario in lore, first starting off with how Mario isn't from Brooklyn.
Movieverse Mario and Luigi are Italians born in real-world Brooklyn, New York. This decision was most likely to appeal to fans in the US who grew up watching the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, and the Adventures of Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World. While creator of Mario, Shigeru Miyamoto, has said the original Mario Bros. Setting was based on New York, the Bros being from Brooklyn was never stated in official games or manuals.
Miyamoto had mentioned Brooklyn before in an interview for a Japanese strategy guide for Super Mario 64, where he says, "It's a given that Mario is an Italian-American from Brooklyn."
However, the context is regarding Mario's voice direction, not his origins.
That's odd. I don't see why that interview excerpt would be referring to the voice direction purely. Miyamoto's response is contextually elaborating on the reason behind Mario's Italian accent in Super Mario 64 that the fan pointed out. That being that Mario is an Italian-American from Brooklyn. So just deeming Miyamoto's statement a pure reference to the voice direction seems more like a stretch, and more akin to Miyamoto viewing Mario's status as an Italian-American from Brooklyn as the basis for Mario's voice direction, making this quote of his evidence for Mario being a Brooklyn, with no intent to be used against that notion.
The city from the Mario Bros. Arcade game is most definitely the same city featured in the original Donkey Kong arcade game. In its Game Boy sequel, also titled Donkey Kong, Mario chases DK across the world, starting in Big City, the same city from the original, and ending in the Mushroom Kingdom. This shows that the Mushroom Kingdom and Big City are on the same planet. A year later, Donkey Kong Land featured Big City as the final world. Now referred to as Big Ape City, the Kongs get there by taking a Zeppelin from DK Island. And of course, Super Mario Odyssey reintroduced Big City as New Donk City, and reiterated that this is where the original Donkey Kong took place.
Okay, so your claims are kinda weird. First off, you say that the city in the Mario Bros. Arcade game is the same one as the one in Donkey Kong arcade game, with absolutely no evidence to that notion. Then you claim that the city in the Donkey Kong arcade game is Big City, by comparing the layouts of the first level. This is just selective interpretation. It could be that the layout is just the standard building layout for the construction crews in the area. And how can you say that the similarity in the layout implies that they're the same place? Mario was a carpenter in the DK games. Why didn't Mario finish the project that was there? Then you say that Big City is Big Ape City, which I don't contest, but you fail to prove that Big City / Big Ape City is the same one as in the DK arcade game. You then try to prove that Big City is on the same planet as the Mushroom Kingdom, since it transitions there at the end of the game. But there's something that's missing. In the background, we can see a warp pipe, and it's been shown that warp pipes can take you to places outside of Mario's planet, like in Super Mario 3D Land and 3D World, so it's not definitively on the same planet. Finally, you try to claim that New Donk City is the place where the events of the Donkey Kong arcade game happen by pointing to the various motifs in New Donk City. But there are also similar references in the New York minute track from Mario Kart Tour, so these claims are certainly not definitive by any stretch. And yes, Mario is from Brooklyn. In spite of that spokesperson interview saying that Mario is a native son of the Mushroom Kingdom, this flies directly in the face of the creator of Mario himself, Miyamoto. There are tons of times across several interviews that state that Mario is from Brooklyn, even after the movie's release. And before you bring up Yoshi's Island, that can't be explained. The thing is, the stork has been shown to make several mistakes beforehand, like in the original Yoshi's Island, so a good way to interpret this is that the stork made a mistake and tried to take Mario and Luigi to Brooklyn, hence the statements of Mario being born in Brooklyn, and just went back to the Mushroom Kingdom. We don't actually have a full back-to-back timeline of Mario's early life, so it's possible that Mario and Luigi moved from place to place constantly, explaining how Mario fought DK and his relatives across several locations, like Brooklyn, New Donk, etc, etc. And the existence of Mario Kart Tour really does nail in that all of this is entirely possible within the canon. About that Mario Maker level, Did Somebody Call a Plumber only showcases a reenactment of a level from Mario Bros., which just implies that the warp pipe system hasn't really altered and still connects to the real world in the Mushroom Kingdom. In the bigger picture, this level is really just displaying Mario and Luigi's travel from the Brooklyn sewer system to the Mushroom Kingdom, which is more so a reenactment of their Super Show origin more than anything else. In the level, Mario and Luigi are at Mario Bros. Plumbing, which is meant to replicate where the characters receive phone calls and doorbell rings, and go through the pipes and do the events of Mario Bros., and eventually they make their way to the Mushroom Kingdom, and end up fighting, more so evading, Bowser, which is all their backstory from the Super Show, including acknowledgement of the main quartet of protagonists, Mario, Luigi, Peach, and Toad. So not only do Mario and Luigi not fully replicate the events of Mario Bros., they don't even go over the events of Super Mario Bros. Afterward, so using this level to establish Mario Bros. Leading right into Super Mario Bros. Is highly questionable, and so saying that the original Super Mario Bros. Is even their first encounter with the Mushroom Kingdom. If we take the Illumination movie into consideration, it would just mean that the Illumination movie happened before Mario Bros., given Pauline's reports on the infestation of sewer with enemies like crabs, and the temporary fusion between Bowser's Kingdom and the real world, both solidifying an explanation behind Mario and Luigi even needing to fight these creatures, in what is just identified as New York sewer systems, no less. This movie would also explain why the princess knows who Mario even is in Super Mario Bros., and acknowledges him personally, despite never being introduced to him at any prior point in the game due to being locked far away. Thus, Super Mario Bros. Being the in-game equivalent of the Illumination movie would just be dismissed if the movie reasonably took place before it. Furthermore, nitpicking the costume choices is extremely trivial when you consider there's no reason for the changes in costumes to not be just a change in design or fashion sense these characters have from time to time. In conclusion, I do not see how the Mario movie contradicts Mario's origins at all, and there's no evidence stating otherwise. In this section, these individuals argue that the abundance of Starmen in the original Super Mario Bros. Contradicts the status of the Superstar as a fabled artifact in the movie.
One of the main conflicts of the film is Bowser stealing the Superstar. It's possible this is a Power Star, but the Japanese website for the film calls it a Superstar, and either way, it contradicts the games.
Superstars are power-ups that grant temporary invincibility. They're abundant all over the Mushroom Kingdom. In Mario's first adventure, Super Mario Bros., they're absolutely everywhere. So the Superstar being some fabled artifact of immense power just doesn't work.
I think there might be more than one Superstar in the movie. Maybe Lumali will turn into one and Mario will use it in the fight against Bowser. But even still, it just doesn't make sense for so much emphasis to be placed upon the one Bowser stole.
I think it's possible that each kingdom in the movie will have its own Superstar. Bowser is trying to claim them all to take over the universe. This is based on the fact that 6 kingdoms can be seen on the map in Peach's castle from the trailer, including the fallen Ice Kingdom that we see Bowser steal the star from. This, of course, lines up with the 6 star emblems we see in the later scene.
Moving on, Power Stars, introduced in Super Mario 64, act as a power source. There are a whopping 120 that power Peach's castle. In Super Mario Galaxy, they return, again as a power source, this time for the Comet Observatory. And we even get some sweet lore about what they are and where they come from. And again, there are 120 to be found all across the areas of the universe that you explore. In Super Mario Galaxy 2, the Power Stars act as a power source for Starship Mario.
And at the end of the game, a green comet showers green power stars all over the universe. Remember that, because I'll be coming back to it in just a second.
In Super Mario Odyssey, Power Stars reappear in the Mushroom Kingdom, and interestingly, Cappy notes that Power Stars are just power moons with a different shape. And power moons are all over the planet. I'm talking about several hundreds of them. And it's likely Shine Sprites and Cat Shines are also the same as Power Stars, which means you've got an entire planet with loads of Power Stars everywhere. And Bowser stealing one of them is a big deal? The New Donk City power plant drains a power moon like once every second. This is not even mentioning Grand Stars, which are extra powerful power stars. Bowser ate one of these in Galaxy 2 and became a giant as a result.
By the way, remember green stars? Well, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker's ending shows one of these green stars raining down onto Mario's planet, and Captain Toad follows it to the Sprixie Kingdom, the setting of Super Mario 3D World. the game with hundreds of green stars as insignificant collectibles. There are 380 green stars in the game, not to mention that Captain Toad had just collected several power stars in his own adventure prior to this. There are so many power stars! Anyway, I think we've made our point. Whether it's a superstar or a power star, it doesn't matter. It's incompatible with what the gameverse has established.
Alright, it's a lot more complicated than that. You can find starmen all over the kingdom in the gameverse because Bowser, or someone else perhaps, just took a bunch of them laying elsewhere and turned them into bricks or invisible constructs. We aren't even sure where exactly they were before and after Peach restored their forms and places, and it could have been somewhere beyond or hidden from many kingdoms due to their sentient, elusive, and heavenly or cosmic nature. Hence why there are so few. Even if I was wrong, you'd have to acknowledge the glaring difference between the Superstar Bowser pursuits and the usual Starman. First off, the star is much larger in comparison to the characters. Unlike how the Superstar is shown in the games, the effects they have in Mario and Luigi are also different, as they jump significantly higher than the usual Starman permits, and are also just one-shotting every character they come across. The fact that people in the movie even know what a Superstar is capable of would also imply that they've been used before, and something that must have been done to necessitate the attempt of locking just one Superstar away, implying someone else may have already used a Superstar prior to devastating effects, which aligns with Bowser having believed he could eternally rule over the world in the use of a very short time span that his Superstar would even be active for. This argument also ignores the key fact that it could just be another type of Starman. In Super Mario Galaxy, we can see the Rainbow Stars, which grant similar but not the same effects as the Starman. With all of this in mind, this argument can be considered nitpicky at best. Also, Catshine, Star Sprites, and Green Stars aren't just implied to be equivalents to Power Stars either, and the case applies to Starman as well. Given how later these reference games take place in comparison to the movie, numerous stars would have just had time to encounter and or fall upon Mario's Earth if they weren't already populating areas that the people of the many kingdoms just may not have found. There's otherwise no real problem with the Superstars. In this section, these individuals argue that the character portrayals in the movie are contradictory to that therein of the games.
Toad is an interesting case. We don't actually see much of Toad's personality in the games. We know he's pretty much Peach's best friend, an extremely loyal one at that, and that he acts as an advisor to her as well. He's also a killer Mario Party host, and a bad driver. But he's up for a little adventure, as we see in Super Mario Bros. 2 and 3D World. The movieverse take on his character isn't too off, but it's still worth mentioning. We don't really know Toad's relationship with Peach at this point, but it seems that he might be trying to impress her? And if these guys are the mushroom retainers from Super Mario Bros., Toad is supposed to be one of them. Last thing to mention is his backpack, which has been leading people to believe his character may have been merged with Captain Toad. And if that's the case, that's definitely a contradiction, because yes, Toad and Captain Toad are separate characters.
Okay, alright. So the first piece of evidence that these individuals use is Toad's hiker equipment. And they use it to say it's a contradiction because Captain Toad exists and Toad having a part in a similar profession would be contradictory. What? Are you individuals unaware that the exploration, hiking, or camping is not the Mushroom Kingdom equivalent of presidency? It's a hobby or job that many people can partake in and isn't just restricted to one person. The equipment Toad has is even the same stuff Captain Toad has. What Toad has just looks more like camping equipment. This entire point of how this is a contradiction is horribly misled.
Oh, Princess Peach. What can we even say about Princess Peach? She's definitely been changed the most for this film. In the gameverse, she's super bubbly and nice and girly. Movie Peach, while she does have a fun side, seems to be much more serious, stoic, and maybe even a bit philosophical.
There's a huge universe out there.
There's been a lot of debate about whether Peach should be able to fight or not, but that isn't an issue. Peach has fought in many games, even as early on as Super Mario Bros. 2. She can fight and stand up for herself if she needs to. The main difference is that while Movie Peach is grabbing a halberd and confidently marching towards Bowser to fight, Game Peach would probably be more likely to sneak in and use her wits to catch Bowser off guard. Bowser is a powerhouse that even Mario can't beat a lot of the time, so it's important for her to be smart and resourceful. Who knows how she'll act in the final movie, but for now, we can at least say that she acts quite differently from her game counterpart.
When it comes to Peach, it's not like she doesn't generally take a battle seriously, and her not being afraid to confront Bowser also isn't exclusive to the movie, going as far as beating Bowser in a sword and gun duel, with revolvers in the Japanese version, blitzing him with a blaster, disassembling him and reassembling into a frog, tossing him around the world, etc, etc. Her waiting for Bowser's arrival with a halberd in her hand, all prepared to fight, isn't really introducing any foreign concepts. All in all, the character portrayals are quite accurate to the games. In this section, these individuals try to argue that the Kong's portrayal in the movies heavily contradicts that of the games.
This is the basic Donkey Kong family tree. Now, why do we bring this up? Because the movie goes against this.
According to the Japanese website for the film, Donkey Kong is Cranky Kong's son, not grandson. And this isn't a translation error. The original text does indeed say son, not grandson. You may be aware that Cranky called DK his son in Donkey Kong 64, but that was one game. And every game before and since has called Cranky his grandfather.
Greg Malis, who was responsible for the original backstory, joked on Twitter that perhaps by Donkey Kong 64, Cranky had become senile. DK being Cranky's son is a very clear and specific lore change in the movieverse that goes against what we know of Cranky Kong in the gameverse.
Oh, okay, so it's just Donkey Kong the Second then.
Oh, and yeah, Cranky Kong is the king of the entire Kong civilization. There are lots of problems here. In the gameverse, Cranky isn't a lavish king, but more like a village elder or chieftain. And speaking of that Kong civilization, there are not this many Kongs in the games. The Kong family has always been depicted as a fairly small group. There isn't even a central city or village or anything, just a few huts across the island. These Kongs even live in other locations, like the northern hemisphere from Donkey Kong Country 3. Wrinkly, Kitty, and Funky seem to live here. Likely Chunky Kong.
Yeah, about that whole thing with Cranky's kingly status apparently making no sense, consider that Donkey Kong Country not only establishes the existence of an actual Kingdom of Kong, but that later games also establish modern-day Donkey Kong as the king of the jungle and the leader of the Kongs, with the source of Japanese text 1 and 2 available if needed. This would all just beg the question of, where could that title have originated from? Which could be answered if we look at the movie. With Cranky Kong as the original ruler of the Kingdom of Kong, the modern-day DK would have just inherited his title later on, thus making him ruler of that kingdom. And I just don't see why there can't be so many Kongs in the games, in a sort of 2-in-1 move against both points regarding the apparent lack of several Kongs in the games and the apparent lack of DK Island's central city. You just need to remember good old Big Ape City from Donkey Kong Land. Donkey Kong Rumble in the Jungle established that it used to be the biggest city on DK Island, but the city has been in ruins, alongside remaining highly dangerous and decaying for years, given Cranky's observation. This of course necessitated numerous Kong citizens having moved away from the city and island. This decreased the remaining Kongs on the island heavily, not to mention the existence of rogue Kongs and other Kongs they had to get rid of, like the Minky Kongs and the Minkies. This would just decrease the count further. It appears in later games that this decrease, whether it be through immigration, sometimes imprisonment, probably just outright death, and how fast the Kong just age in general, which I've already established as very quick in comparison to other species, just became a trend until the latest games, where DK, Diddy, Dixie, Cranky, and Funky are some of the only remaining Kongs on DK Island.
In the gameverse, there are loads of ancient Kong ruins across DK Island, but in the movieverse, they aren't ancient. Or ruins, they're buildings that are part of the current living Kong civilization. And speaking more about the Kong civilization, they drive around their roads on custom carts, which definitely doesn't happen in the gameverse. They're all about that barrel cannon transport. Another big thing to note is that the Kongs don't even speak English in the gameverse. They speak some sort of animal or Kong language. They can clearly speak in the movieverse, though.
I'm sorry. Okay. Now you die.
In the marketing for this film, they've been referring to the island as the Jungle Kingdom. Perhaps it's still called Donkey Kong Island, and it's just within the Jungle Kingdom, but it's worth noting. Oh, and of course, the design of the island is entirely different, with this golden head waterfall being the main attraction rather than the volcano. And if this is Mario's first adventure, the big DK head and glacier should still be around.
Yeah, so about their point about the ancient Aztec-themed structures that are still in good condition. Angry Aztec from Donkey Kong 64. Yeah, moving on. The Ring of Kong's existence and the lack of ruin in the Aztec-themed civilization in the movie doesn't really contradict anything. Like, not only for the reason that stuff like the Ring of Kong doesn't have to fall into the same period of ruin as other ruined locations, but also that the movie civilization simply could have just withered away at any other period in time, similar to when I brought up the decaying status of Big Ape City. Furthermore, since when were all of the Kongs all about barrel transportation? A pretty blatant example of this not being the case is Funky Kong. We already know of his profession in barrel plane flight and among his other methods of travel he makes, like the motorboat, hovercraft, turbo ski, and gyrocopter. And the Kongs have used technology like the toboggans, DK's barrel train, and a series of steam trains, dozens of mine carts, jet-powered bongs, etc, etc, etc. And yeah, the Kongs have spoken English before. Cranky and the amount of time the guy starts yapping in English is one of the greatest, if not the most blatant examples of the contrary. Funky Kong also likes to speak English all too frequently, alongside other Kongs rather frequently in the games, going as far as having fully English conversations and reading and writing in English, with dozens more examples. And now on to one of the most commonly made points throughout these series of videos. Map differences. Anyone who's played any Mario game before, or he knows where I'm headed, the maps and layout across several Mario games almost always, in one way or another, contradict each other. Just look at how New Super Mario Bros. DS compares to New Super Mario Bros. Wii, or Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga compared to Mario & Luigi Paper Jam, or Super Mario Galaxy compares to Super Mario 64, or even just restricting our view to the DK series, compare Donkey Kong Country to Donkey Kong 64, or compare both of them to Donkey Kong Country Returns and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. And there are tons of examples I could show off just to make any point in reference to a supposed contradiction in maps look ridiculous. By this logic, a lot of games suddenly wouldn't be canon to one another. Anyways, there's no contradiction when it comes to the Kong's portrayal in the movies. I actually quite like it myself. In this section, these individuals argue that the technology shown in the Mario movie is contradictory to that of the games.
The first Mario Kart tournament was Super Mario Kart. Compared to later entries, it seems pretty low budget with not too many big set pieces or hazards. Everyone drives around in pipe frame karts, and would continue to do so until Mario Kart Double Dash. So it's a little odd that there are already fancy kart customization features in the Jungle Kingdom, including custom wheels and gliders, which weren't involved until Mario Kart 7. There are even bikes, which weren't introduced until Mario Kart Wii, and also anti-gravity, which didn't come about until Mario Kart 8.
Now, as for this point, there are two ways I could refute this. First, I could say that it's possible that after the Kong civilization went into decay, like I suggested in the Kong section, they would have just lost access to the kart technology and would have just started out with pipe frames and nonsense. Although I do think there's a better explanation. The karts in the movie are hidden away in a secret armory far within the Jungle Kingdom, and it's just possible that the Kongs weren't willing to let Mario and crew have access to their basically military-grade weaponry just for some fun times. Also, the Kongs having advanced tech isn't exactly a foreign concept, as I showed with the machines that Funky was able to build, along with their barrel transport system being able to transport their users to different dimensions like the bonus levels in Donkey Kong Country 2. And as for Lakitu, it's quite obvious why he's not here. The kart scene wasn't a race for friendly competition, it was a battle. Like a real battle, like in those war thingies. Anyways, there are no contradictions when it comes to the Mario Kart sections in the movie.
Objection!
These seemingly adult penguins are baby penguin sized. Children and adults are much bigger in the gameverse.
Objection!
The Koopa Troop is outfitted with armor and spears. In the gameverse, they've never used spears, and they seldom wear armor, but when they do, it doesn't look like that.
Objection!
Movieverse Pauline is wearing the same suit she wears in Super Mario Odyssey, meaning she's possibly the mayor of New York? In the gameverse, she wouldn't have been mayor at this point, not to mention she'd be the mayor of New Donk, not New York.
Objection!
York.
Mario and Luigi are service plumbers in the movie, while they're construction plumbers in the games. Service plumbers are the kind you call to fix a leaky sink or a clogged toilet, while construction plumbers install the actual pipes, drainage systems, etc. during the construction of the building.
Objection!
Movieverse Mario and Luigi are sucked into the warp pipe instead of fighting Bowser's minions in the sewers and following them to the Mushroom Kingdom. The inside of a warp pipe in the Movieverse appears to be quite different than how it appears in Super Mario 3D World.
Objection!
Tall mushrooms are everywhere in the Movieverse Mushroom Kingdom, despite being concentrated to smaller areas in the Gameverse. Floating islands are also everywhere, while in the Gameverse, there aren't really that many floating islands at all.
Objection!
In place of Toad Town is a huge, sprawling city compared to the quaint small village we see in the game.
Objection!
Clear pipes are in the Mushroom Kingdom prior to the events of Super Mario 3D World.
Objection!
In the Gameverse, Goombas were originally allied with the Mushroom Kingdom, but betrayed them to join Bowser. This doesn't seem like the case in the Movieverse.
Objection!
The Darklands don't exist in the Gameverse. While clearly based on Darkland from Super Mario Bros. 3, this is probably more like the equivalent of the Koopa Kingdom, or perhaps a land Bowser previously destroyed and conquered.
Objection!
The pyramid in Toast Arena is floating before it's raised during the events of Super Mario Odyssey. Also, the pyramid was hexagonal in Odyssey, but it doesn't appear to be here.
Objection!
There's a catsuit on DK Island for some reason.
Objection!
Fire Donkey Kong has a different design than in Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2, much of the minis.
In the movie, the Super Mushroom doubles Mario's size. In the games, it either heals or returns Mario to normal if he's become small. Mario is already normal in the movie, so he shouldn't have grown at all here.
Objection!
that just about does it for part 1 of this video series. Since this video is getting way too long for my taste, I'll just stop here and make a part 2 to all this nonsense at a later date. Probably really soon, as a matter of fact. But anyways, that's all from me. See ya in part 2.